Good morning. Jeff Dawson from Dallas, Texas, Amazon best-selling author. Love's True Second Chance, occupation, Gateway Pioche, and a host of other works. So if you're a reader and you're looking for something to look me up, get your book, sit back, and relax. The one I'm most proud of is Love's True Second Chance, the true story of me reuniting with my high school sweetheart back in 2008, 09, and the 7 wonderful months we had together before 809, and the 7 wonderful months we had together before breast cancer claimed her in July 20th, 2009. But it was a wonderful 7 months, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Okay. Yes, I watched the press conference yesterday, and I've got a few notes here that I want to go over. I write up an analysis on anything I think that's important. And I have people, some are friends, some are associates, and some are just irritating as hell, that will come on to my Facebook page and tell me what drivel and diatribe and blah, blah, blah. And my response to them is, if you don't like it, get the hell off. No one told you I had to come on. Some of my good friends have said, well, why do you let them still come on? Why don't you just block them or unfriend them? Some I have because of the vulgarity. I don't allow that on my page. Not when people start going after each other with knives and pitchforks. That's just not happening. That happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. And an entire stream was just, no, you guys are done. I don't care if you supported my position or didn't support my position. That crap ain't going to fly on my page. You can't keep it clean. You can't be intelligent. Stay the hell off. It's that simple. Make a choice. Isn't that what life is about? Make choices. Of course, in today's political climate, that seems to be a real push. Because if you watch the media, you don't know what the hell to believe. So prior to the conference, I had to put the mute on. I was watching the Pride of the Yankees with Jeff at third. I don't know what the hell Daniels and who is it? Chris Davis now is the GM. I have no clue what guys are doing. I just know it's going to be another year of mediocrity because we have no starting pitching. Gibson was a trade. He's back up. I wasn't impressed with him last year. I forgot who the other guy was, but this starting pitching rotation is pathetic. Defensively, I believe they'll be solid. Team average, 260, 265. But if you don't have good starting pitching, it's all kind of academic. It's going to be another mediocre, subpar, disappointing year in the new $1.1 billion dome stadium. And unlike in Monty Python, when they ate Robin's minstrels, there will be no great rejoicing. Okay. So I watched it, and then I took my time and I made my notes. And as I've said in the past, I am a conservative. Take that for what it is. I don't like Joe Biden. Don't think he can do the job. I'd rather seen Tulsi Gabbard win the Democratic nomination than him. I like her. She's smart. She has energy. She can make intelligent decisions. That's not what we saw yesterday. If you don't agree with that, that's your choice. Isn't it? Yes, it's a choice. You don't like something, turn it off. It's like picking up a book. You go to the store, you find a book that looks interesting, you read the title, then you read the back cover, and then, maybe read a chapter or two, kind of like on Amazon where you can go to a book, click on it, and get the sample to see if you like the style, if you like where you think the story's going, if the author hired a good editor for grammar and punctuation and style, see if the format's right. You don't like it, you're not going to waste $9.99 or whatever that book costs. You just, not for me, move on. And I've done that multiple times from people who have asked for reviews, which I do review books, and I'm still in a pissing contest with Amazon after they deleted 850 of mine and won't respond to why. I don't know how many messages I've sent Bezos and his incompetent staff at the review board. They used to have a phone number you could call into, because I got mine deleted. Let's see, that was this is 2020. I think it was like 2019. I actually got a hold of a real representative, and I said, "What the hell, Jack?" And he started looking at him, and he goes, "I don't know what the problem is. I don't see anything inflammatory here." And then I had to reload all of those reviews. That was a real pain in the ass. It was like a 2-week deal. And then here comes August of 2019. Bam, wiped them out again. Why did you delete them? No response. Kind of like that certified letter I sent to Zuckerberg back in 2010. At least I know he got it. I still got the green card that says it was delivered, but was there a response? No. Yeah, that was over a book cover for Occupation that has a vampire biting into a swastika. In fact, hang on. Let me get one. Yes, this, see that? It's a vampire biting into a swastika. Yep, that's a vampire biting in the swastika, but they didn't like that. Shocking. So yeah, I have a banned book cover. Isn't that wonderful? So we had to change it. But you can still buy the printed copy with that cover, because that's what it's about. It's about vampires taking on the Third Reich with the real history of World War II. Pretty cool concept, if you ask me. I've written 3 books in this series, and one of these days I'll get off my dead ass and start on the 4th one. But there's so many characters, I've got to wait until they all decide what they want to do. Okay. So here are my comments. And as I said earlier, I don't like any of the anchors. I can't think of one that I would sit down and have a cup of coffee with, because they're all so full of themselves. It's just pathetic, and it's all their spin, and it's all their take. Maybe if they could develop a thought, I'd get into it, but I'll be damned if I have them yell at me. And there for a while, I really pushed WGN, because I thought, man, maybe these people are going to get it right. Well, within 5 months, they had to change their whole format. Now, the first gal that comes on at 5, Burley, I believe her name is. So far, she seems to be doing all right. But Donlin, man, I don't give 2 shits about that. And Banfield, I'm not watching that. Not at all. That's talk. What the hell is that? How do you talk to someone when you're not sitting down with each other? It's just like, God, let's get the pom-poms out and have a cheerleading contest or something. Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. 3 hours of news wasn't enough for them. Now they've gone to 5. Well, if I watch the first 15 minutes, that's a push. I'm not watching the rest of these monologue bastards, because that's all it is. We're going to hammer you over the head with what we think for the next 10 to 15 minutes. And that's a quarter of the show. And the other quarter is interviewing people. Oh, no, it's not people. They're interviewing anchors from the show. Our special guest is Sean Hannity or Martha McCollum or Dana Pereira. I don't give 2 shits about that. And the other ones are just as bad. Who says they're an expert? I don't give a damn about your degrees. Stick them in your ass. I have plenty of people tell me through my years of construction about all the degrees they have. And one of my favorite stories was this engineer. He came out. I've been trying to get him on a job site for like 2 months. He wouldn't listen to me. He finally came out and started telling me where he went to college and that where he got his bachelor's and his master's and was working on his PhD. And I'm just standing there going, well, how enlightening. I'm glad you could share that with him. But give me just 1 minute. I need to go to my truck for a minute. It's like, well, I have a schedule to keep. I said, so do I. So just hang on. And I came walking back with a roll of toilet paper. And I said, you know something? All the degrees you have are useless. This roll of toilet paper has a use. He just stared at me. I said, I'm tired of the crap. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care about your degrees. What I care about is resolving the problem we have on this job that you've ignored for 2 months. Now, here's the problem. What the hell do you want to do? Need to borrow my toilet paper while you clean the shit off your face? That didn't go over well. But it got resolved. Yeah, we don't exchange Christmas cards. So all these, quote, experts that you hear on the news, expert in what? I have no use for those people. Okay. So let's go through this. And no, I don't have a teleprompter. And I don't have double screens. And if I did have a double screen, I wouldn't be able to read it anyway because my eyesight is anything but good. I had 2 retinal surgeries on my left eye 3 years ago. That really set the stage for a downward spiral in sight. Cornea ulcer, cataract. It's been a grand old time in the town tonight. All right. We, the American people, waited 64 days to have a, quote, presidential press conference. Well, I'm still waiting. I was torn between watching Pride of the Yankees with Gary Cooper or watching Biden. Believe me, it was a tough choice, but one must make sacrifices. One sacrifice I would not make, as I said earlier, was watching all the pregame carnival that the networks were holding. Barnum and Bailey should have gone into the news racket instead of the circus. They'd still be in business today. Instead of a 3-ring circus, we get a 5 to 6 ring circus with a main event. We just don't know what that is. Pretty pathetic, if you ask me. When I saw Martha McCallum, all I could think about was the movie Frozen. Yep, she looked like a fox snow queen. Perhaps she'd be a stand-in for the next movie. And if you saw her, it did. It's like, what the hell? Is it Christmas and spring? Or is a blizzard coming? And then when they had her side by side with Sandra, it's like, well, they obviously use the same hairdresser. How much did that cost? I mean, really, how do people wearing $5,000 suits, God knows what the women's outfits cost, relate to people making $40,000 to $50,000 a year? They can't, dumbasses. Oh, but they look good compared to what? Diamond in a pig's ass? I don't know. Okay, now before I get into the end, my thoughts here, I try and look at everything objectively. You can believe that or you don't believe it. It doesn't matter. It's a choice. You want to do your own research? Do your own research. It's that simple. Okay. What did we learn today? Well, that's a good question. One of the reporters should have tried asking what it would have had to be it would have had to be a prepared question. I don't remember Trump, McEnany, or Sanders looking at a list of hand-picked reporters to call on, or did I miss something? And I'm serious about that. As far as Spicer, I already said what I thought about Sean Spicer. I don't like, he was a waste of space. But I don't remember Sarah and Kaylee going through a list, or Trump, a prepared list of reporters to call on. Well, they did that yesterday. First and foremost, let's get to the good, okay? Well, there's got to be some good somewhere. Sometimes you got to look for it, but it's there. Biden's administration has done an exemplary job in continuing with Trump's warp speed. Whatever holes that were in the original plan and distribution have been addressed and plugged. It was no small feat. Producing a product and getting it into those who need it is always a logistical challenge, and it has been met with great success. That's good. I make no qualms about that. Now, when the new administration came in and said, well, we took over and had nothing in place, well, that was a lie. Look it up. The DOD had a distribution set up, but they hadn't quite implemented it yet. And if you talk to anyone in the military or anyone on a construction site, you have a plan. Plans change. If you saw the movie Ford versus Ferrari with Matt Damon, and BB comes down and goes, I thought we were supposed to be doing this, that, and the other, and Damon doesn't even give him the time of day and says plans change. They do. So this has been a great success. You got to give Joe a thumbs up for that. Not a problem. Okay, that's the good. The okay. The American Rescue Act did pass. Trump wanted $1 trillion. Biden got 1.9. You can research on what the big difference was between those. But it only took 6 months to get through. Could have happened back in October, but Pelosi didn't want Trump to have another bipartisan victory because that would have been 6 in 1 year. And you waited 6 months to get $1,400 or $233 a month. Well, what's that translate into? For those who visit some of the finer establishment, 11 table dances and 1 drink. That's right, naked lady bar. And that's it. It sure won't cover a family for an MLB game or an NFL game. And it'll feed a family of 4 for what, maybe a week, and you waited 6 months for this. What about the other 23 weeks that you waited? And I listen to people every day talk about, did you get your money? Did you get your money? And I'm thinking, it is our money. Did you get it? And how long is it going to last? Okay. And now for the bad and the ugly. We know less about this border crisis than we did 2 months ago. What we do know is the press will be granted full access when he's ready for them to have access. Excuse me? What the hell is that? And being a history buff, any of us have read about World War II, World War I, or Vietnam know this. When the Red Cross came to perform inspections at the POW camps the Germans had, and even some of the concentration camps, well, they knew 2 weeks in advance, and they did everything to clean those operations up. In fact, there's a good, in War and Remembrance, they have an episode where they're talking about Theresienstadt, which was supposed to be one of these model communities that they were sending the Jews to. And when they knew the Red Cross was coming, man, they broke out the duds. They painted everything. They planted stuff. I mean, this was actually a real city. It wasn't a camp like Auschwitz or Buchenwald. What the Red Cross didn't know is that's where all these people were headed to. And even Vietnam, when our, quote, celebrities were allowed to visit the POWs and talk about the great care they got. Yeah, we found out about that later. So when you're ready, I don't understand this. And what was this about when you were vice president? You went to a country and built street lights down there so could reduce the crime rate. He doesn't mention what country that is. He did talk about the 700 million that they had set up. Why the hell are we going to other countries and working on their infrastructure and providing them light? And hell, I can go to South Dallas. I can go to West Dallas. I can go through plenty of neighborhoods where the lights don't work and the crime rate's high. Don't see them spending that money here. What about New York, Baltimore, Detroit, Cincinnati, Columbus? I can go through a list. Oh, but we're doing it in other foreign countries. Isn't that called American imperialism? Isn't that the term that we heard all through the Bush Jr.'s administration? Yeah, that's what we did. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Joe said migration has always been a problem. Then he said under his plan with Obama, it wasn't a problem. Well, what did the statistics say? Well, according to statisticites, alien apprehension peaked at 1.6 million in 2000. Remember when Clinton put more border guards on the southern border? That actually worked. He didn't get a lot of credit for them, and I was one of those that I was not a Clinton fan, but that was good, and it worked. I think it was like 900 officers that they added, and the apprehensions went up. Under Junior, they started dropping. Now, was that a result of new policies being passed, enforcing current laws, or fewer trying to get across? That's for anyone's dissection. You can make your own analysis on that. But from 08 to 16, there were minor upticks in arrests or detained illegals. Why? Under Trump, those numbers escalated upward to just under 900,000 in 2009. So I think the highest under Obama was like 345,000 that they apprehended. Okay, now deportation numbers. Clinton, 869,000. Junior, 2.012 million. Obama, 3.006 million. And Trump, 1.114 million. And I had to extrapolate that because the site that I went to only had the first 2 years. And it was like 574. So I said, okay, well, let's just double that. And that ought to be in the ballpark. But there was no precipitous drop in illegal immigration, as Joe stated, when he was in charge of addressing the problem, and that's the whole point. There wasn't this big drop that you talked about. And if there was, could we please see the numbers? Because every site that I looked at is in conflict with what you say. And here's the big one. And why, no question, about the illegals in detention being moved to different facilities, being tested for COVID-19, and how are they being quarantined? And what was this about Trump starving children on the border? My God, if that would have actually happened, you know the MSM would have been jumping up and down like fleas on a dog, raising 9 kinds of holy hell over that. I mean, they did enough over kids in cages. If those people would have been starving down there, well, then there should have just been body bags lined up and all these emaciated people. Did you see that? No. And the media would not have given Trump a pass on that. We all know that. So, Joe, that's a lie. Just making shit up as you go. What the hell? Oh, Jesus. Now, that's enough on immigration. You get the point there. Why didn't a reporter ask this question? Do you believe Putin is a murderer? And could you put that in context? Yeah, that wouldn't get through the vetters, but he made that comment. My God, if Trump would have said Putin was a murderer, Xi was a murderer, Rocket Man was a murderer, the press would have lost their mind. He's unfit for office. You can't say that about a foreign leader, and on and on and on. But where was that? Where's the press today? I don't know. Maybe they're playing pickup sticks. Jacking off might be more appropriate. Might get a better result. On the infrastructure. Oh, this one just went all over me since I'm in construction. Blaming it on global warming was ridiculous because of the rising seas. The numbers that he quoted have been in ENR, which is Engineering News Record, and concrete construction for decades. This is nothing new that our infrastructure is collapsing. Concrete has a lifespan of maybe 40 years, and that's a push. 20 is design. But you can get 40 if you're kind of careful with it. Our highway system, for the most part, was built in the 60s. That makes it 61 years old. It's been failing since starting in the 90s. Yes, America has grown a lot. 330 million people. I'd have to go back to see what it was in 1960 and 70 and 80 and 90, et cetera, et cetera. Trucks have gotten heavier, 80,000 pounds. And I'll say this much, folks. You can't blame the contractors for this. We are given specifications to follow. We are given design criteria to follow, and that's how we build these roads and bridges and water lines and sewer lines and storm drains. We don't do the design, someone else does. But if the soil we're working on is rotten, guess what? It doesn't matter how thick you make a road, it's going to collapse. We have a perfect example in the DFW area up around Las Colinas. You could pour 635 2 feet thick and it'd still rock and roll like a Six Flags roller coaster because the soil underneath it is rotten to 30 feet. That's a whole different topic, but I'm not going to get into it. But it was global warming. Well, I guess global warming. Remember the I-35 collapse in Minneapolis back in 2007? It was the talk of the town, or the I-40 in Oklahoma in 2002. And anyone who crossed the I-35 bridge south of Norman or I-44 and west of Tulsa crossing the Arkansas, know what a joy that was. That bridge south of Norman scared the hell out of me when I would go over it. They finally rebuilt that, and I-44 in Tulsa wasn't much better. Why? Because they were old. Concrete has a life expectancy, and it had exceeded it, along with the steel that was holding it. The I-44 bridge, they called it a pin and pad operation. You have these elastomer pads that the beams sit on, and then it's pinned, kind of like a cantilever, if you want to say it. It's got a pin connection at the base. Well, the pins popped out. And the Oklahoma Department of Transportation didn't have enough money to send their people all around town, all around the state, to verify proper maintenance on them. And hell, the residents were even calling the DOT to tell them this bridge is making funny noises. Yeah, it made a real funny noise when the damn thing fell into the Canadian River. Oh, geez. Oh, but it's global warming. And then comparing our infrastructure spending to China is extremely laughable. A capitalist economy based on a communist economy. How many labor unions does China have? How many private independent contractors bid on projects? How many bonds do they pass for improvements? How many private suppliers does China have for personal profit? That answer is zero. Nada. None. It's all run by the government. That's not the way we work in the United States. But he did make a bold statement that China will not become number one in the world economy or power under his watch. Well, they've already surpassed us militarily, including naval forces, because if you've watched the news in the last year or two or seen it on Military Times, China has the biggest navy in the world. How the hell did that happen? Well, they can set the price because they set the wages, they set the hours, they own all the material suppliers. So you can't compare how they can build stuff and we can't. It's ridiculous. And Joe, how are you going to stop their economic growth since you didn't like any of Trump's deals, any of his trade deals? You can't. You can pull all of the American companies out of China? I doubt that. So let's just say that's a half-truth. Just for shits and grins, it's a half-truth. Moving on to the filibuster. If you do a cursory search, you can find where Biden got his thought pattern. Because I listened to him talk and I was like, oh shit, that came right out of Wikipedia and every other site I've seen until I did some real digging. Every article refers to Obama's remarks after John Lewis died. And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow Eric, in order to secure the God given rights of every American, referring to voting, then that's what we should do. But of course, in the debate, they always forget to mention Democrat Strom Thurmond had a 30-hour marathon against the Civil Rights Bill. And the filibuster came to birth long before Jim Crow, but does anyone do the research? How about 1794? That'd be the 18th century. That's like 60 years before, 80 years before we have our Civil War, 90 years before we have Jim Crow, and I can go on. Do a little research, Joe, a little history lesson. Those people who work for you making enough money, any of them thought about cracking open a history book? Yeah, I don't know. But he wants to eliminate it. And for him to say he doesn't know how it works, how many years were you in the Senate? And 8 years as vice president? So what's that, 39 years in the Senate and you don't know how Senate rules work? Well, what the hell did you do all that time, Joe? But you're going to figure out a way to eliminate it? Yeah, what type of crap is that? But how many of you remember his inspiring inauguration about unifying all Americans, even those that voted for Trump? And even though he's been in office for, 2 months, as Psaki keeps parroting every time she gets up, well, we've only been here 6 weeks. Well, we've only been here 8 weeks. We've only been here 10 weeks. He's been in government for 47 years. You're in the Obama administration, so I'm tired of hearing these lame excuses. Pull your head out of your ass and come up with something new. But he wanted all of his bills to be bipartisan. He wanted Republicans to join on. That's what he said in his inauguration speech. Yeah, that changed yesterday. We'll do it with or without them. That's exactly what he said. That's all there is to it. Sounds like unity to me. What about you? He's done a lot in a very short period of time. What are we up to? 59 executive orders? And the best place to find them all is type in executive orders, CNN list. Because the Federal Register is not up to date. I've gotten in a debate with a person over that, and they said, so they're wrong? And I said, yeah, they're wrong. Because it takes them a while to log it, enter it, and publish it. Yeah, 59. Gee, didn't he say that only a dictator rules by executive order? And he is leading the pack of all presidents, with the exception of FDR right now. Well, I'd have to look up Roosevelt and see how many he signed in his first 2 months. I mean, he does lead the pack in how many he signed through his 4 terms. But that's another deal. And then we get into Afghanistan. For decades, Americans, we've wanted our troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We still have approximately 5,000 troops, 2,500 per country, which is more than are stationed, which are less than that are stationed in D.C. right now. Yeah, you do the math on that. And 2,500 troops in a country, that does good to be a security force. Hell, they got 8,000 Capitol Police. I did a video on that a while back on how many police officers in Washington, D.C. and how many Capitol Police there are. And I think it's 12 or 14,000 altogether. And they can't seem to keep peace in D.C. And we've got 5,000 troops between Iraq and Afghanistan. We're supposed to keep the peace? Yeah. And this is where Trump got into it with Mattis. After ISIS was taken down, Trump wanted out because the military couldn't give him a good mission statement why we're still there. Well, if you're the president of the United States and your chief military advisor doesn't agree with you, what do? You fire him. Kind of like Truman did MacArthur. You fire him. You find somebody with your vision. But Biden wouldn't commit to our troops being done by May 2nd. It was blah, 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 blah. I got to get with my allies, and we've got to work out our strategies, and we've got to do this. And he wouldn't. He almost said there wouldn't be any troops overseas in those two countries in 2022, but he stopped just short of that. You decide if that's good or bad. Oh, and let me do North Korea next. So whether it's Rocket Man or his sister, they fired 2 more missiles into the Sea of Japan. And Joe's response, well, he quotes a resolution from the UN. Like they're going to do something. What has the UN done to stop a conflict? How did that work out in Korea and Somalia? It doesn't. The UN is just a ridiculous organization. They do nothing. Did they stop the violence in Kosovo? No. But the UN is going to do something to North Korea. Yeah, history says that's laughable. They're not going to do a damn thing. That's what they're good at. We give them a lot of money, just like we do the WHO, and we're going to do these Paris Accords and Iran and the nuclear deal. And what do we get in return? We don't get a damn thing in return. Nothing. Look it up. $500 million to the World Health Organization each year. Yeah, they did a bang up job keeping that virus in China, didn't they? Ask the Italians and the Spaniards and the Brits how that worked out for them. They come out, oh, China has it under control. They didn't have shit under control. We've only lost, 540,000 people? That's another story, too. Oh, and then what is this crap from CBS and Caitlin Collins? Are you running in 2024? Who gives a shit? Do you think you'll be running against Trump? Who cares? And is Kamala going to be your running mate? What? Well, Jen says I've only been in office for two months. And he also said I can't plan 3 to 4 years in advance. The president of the United States said he can't plan 3 to 4 years ahead. Now that ought to be a wake-up call to you. When we have a construction project, if it lasts 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, we have to put what is called a CPM together, a critical path method chart. There's a lot of software out there on how you accomplish this. But we have to schedule the whole job out from start to finish. Joe can't go 3 years. That ought to be a wake-up call to a lot of you folks. That's ridiculous. So how far do you plan ahead, Joe? 1 day? I don't know. Okay. And HR 1 came up in a roundabout way. I've heard the argument that Republicans are trying to pass draconian legislation on voting. All the articles I've seen and read want voter identification mandatory. What a novel idea. Prove you're a U.S. citizen registered to vote in your city, county, or state. HR 1 eliminates all of that. And what is all this talk of voter suppression? 74% of registered voters voted in the presidential election, the senatorial, and the congressional. compared to 58% in 2016. Show me the voter suppression. Where is it? There wasn't any. And this narrative that the MSN keeps blaring out is false. You have to prove you're a citizen to vote. That's the basis of our Constitution. You have to be a citizen. If you weren't born in the United States, you can't run for president of the United States. Remember when Arnold was governor of California and Republicans were all excited? Ooh, he could run for president. No, he's Austrian. He can't run for president. You have to be a citizen born in the United States. And I've talked about HR 1 before, and I'll do it one more time because this is really picking up steam, and I started talking about it 6 weeks ago. Let's see, March, February. I think it was the end of January when I did the first one. But it's a horrible bill. It's a horrible bill. Read it. It's like 430 pages long. Oh. And, you know, on the suppression, I read the letter BLM sent to Biden and Harris. And they're claiming, we put you over the top. We got you in office. Well, those are all the minorities. Or blacks, Mexicans, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. And now they want to be paid for it. They want payback. Yeah, it's in their letter. Look it up. It's on the BLM site. There was no voter suppression. Zero. This argument is old and tired, and anybody who wants to research it can find out for themselves. And finally, the last reporter. Did you watch this? Biden exited the wrong way. He went stage right. And it's like, what's he doing? He forgot which way to go. And boy, that gal pounced on him. She got him cornered and threw him for a loop because she bore in to some really good questions on immigration. And since he didn't have his notes and didn't have that question in front of them, he was like, oh, shit, what do I do now? What do I do now? I wasn't ready for that. And then he just says, I'm leaving, and walks off. And then the gaggle of reporters, all 30 of them, I don't know if this was for theater or optics, but all of a sudden, they all start screaming and yelling questions at him, knowing he's not going to stop and ask them. I guess they were trying to bring back when Trump would have his press conferences, or Kayleigh or Sarah, and they're yelling at him the whole time. And yet they got called on. We are not getting press conferences at all. These are all hand-picked reporters that they're going to call on with prepared questions. We need to see a conference. Look at all the ones that Trump had. He had so many informal ones. I can't count them. If the press was there, he went over and took a few questions. He didn't have a list in his pocket of who he'd call on. And if he didn't like him, he'd tell them. Like Jim Acosta. Joe's not being pushed by the press at all. And if you think he is, well, I don't know what you're smoking, but change brands. It's ridiculous. It's a stage. That's all it is. You can sit there and go through the list of who you're going to call on. What the hell is that? How many reporters did Trump call and go, who are you and who are you with? Remember that gal from the Chinese paper? I forgot her name, but he didn't know who she was, but he's like, who are you? What's your name? After she put her question out, and she responded, and he's like, oh, the Chinese Communist newspaper. Yeah, okay, well, I'll answer your question. He didn't dodge questions. He was mentally prepared. Joe is not mentally prepared. Now, as it happened, as I stated earlier about my Facebook post, because this is up there and you can also find a copy of it on lddjenterprises.com and go to my blog. I've posted this. And, you know, I'm sure many on the left will say how calm, cool, and collected it was, how civil it was, and what a fresh breath of air he's brought to the office. Well, naturally, when you've told the press you have to submit questions beforehand, and if you act up, you won't be invited back. It's pretty damn simple to do. And I already went over, it was comical to listen to reporters shouting out questions as he walked out, knowing he wouldn't answer them. Reminded me of the cartoon character Snagglepuss, exit stage left. And was all said and done, I should have watched Pride of the Yankees. It is definitely more interesting and educational. Waited 64 days for that. We know less today than we did then. And if you don't believe that, then counter me. Tell me what you learned. Tell me the specifics he laid out, with the exception of COVID, which I already gave him props for. Tell me what you learned about immigration that's different from the previous administration. Dealing with North Korea, dealing with China, dealing with our economy. And I'll listen and I'll debate with you and I'll keep it civil. Because the minute you have to drop off and F-bombs and this, that, and the other, there is no discussion. There is no debate because I won't be drawn into that mud hole. It just shows me a lack of intelligence when people resort to that. And if you don't feel that way, well, it's a choice, isn't it? And that's all I've got for this Friday morning. So you all have a good weekend, and we will talk to you later.